The dust-covered planet of Orphax 7 had not seen a storm in years, but today the sky roared and cracked open with unnatural force. Soldiers from the Ziari Dominion moved across the burning sands, their blue armor glinting under the blood orange. Sun, they had arrived not to fight, but to celebrate. This world marked the final grave of a species long erased from existence. Humans, they had believed, were extinct, not misplaced. Not hidden, but fully and finally erased after the purge. Wars. The Dominion had written songs about the day Earth burned. They taught children about the weakness of flesh and the madness of emotion. Humans were monsters, they said, brutal, untamed, gone. Commander Rizek marched through the ruins with a squad of elite scouts. The ruins were half-buried, charred black, and still held the bitter stench of melted stone. But something was off. Her eyes narrowed as she noticed signs that weren't in the official records. Scorch marks shaped like recent plasma blasts. A trail of boot prints too fresh for a dead world. A soldier stepped forward. His name was Kale, quiet, young but clever. He crouched and pressed his palm against the ground. The heat was wrong. The sand beneath was still warm, as if someone had walked through here minutes ago. Rizek gave the order to fan out and search the area. Her instincts, sharp from centuries of war, told her something was very wrong. They entered the hollowed out building with weapons raised. The walls were cracked and smoke-stained. A sound echoed in the dark. It was not mechanical. It was breathing, heavy, measured, alive. Rizek's squad froze. Then they turned their lights toward the sound. There, against the wall, sat a figure in broken armor. The design was unlike anything they'd seen in centuries. Not Dominion tech, not modern at all. The armor was rusted, patched with wires, and painted in faded colors of blue and green. The man's head was bowed. He looked unconscious. Perhaps already dead. But then his fingers twitched. Rizek aimed her weapon at his chest. "Identify yourself," she said. Her voice was calm, but her heart thumped hard against her ribs. No reply came. Kale moved closer, his hand on the trigger. He reached forward and tilted the man's chin up. What he saw made him stumble back. The face beneath the visor was unmistakably human. Pale skin, coarse beard, scars that told of brutal survival. Eyes closed, but breathing steady. Impossible. No human had drawn breath in 400 years. Their DNA was supposed to be erased from all corners of the galaxy. Rizek lowered her weapon slightly. She had seen holograms of human anatomy during military training. This wasn't a clone or a puppet. This was real. She whispered to herself, "This can't be." The man stirred. Slowly he raised his head and opened his eyes, his stare cut. Through the silence, cold, sharp, calculated. "So," he said with a dry voice, "you came back." He stood, joints cracking beneath the weight of old bones and metal. Rizek's team raised their weapons again, but he didn't flinch. His hand rested on a jagged spear welded from Dominion scrap. "You think we're gone," he said, "but one survived." The wind howled as he stepped forward. His movements were slow, but full of purpose, like a storm that never stopped moving. "Now," he said, his voice steady and low, "you'll pay for what you did." The air around the man felt heavier than the wind itself. Even though he looked like he had just risen from a grave, the calm in his stance made the soldiers pause. They had seen monsters, machines, and warlords. But this man stood with silence like a sword. Commander Rizek gave a signal. 3 soldiers moved forward, aiming their rifles with precision. But the man didn't flinch or raise his hands. Instead, he looked past them, as if he could already see what came next. His lips curled slightly, not a smile, but something close to recognition. "You still don't understand what you created," he said. His voice was tired but strong. "You turned the galaxy against us, and you failed. We never needed numbers. We only needed time. Kale tightened his grip on the trigger. This is not possible, he muttered. There are no humans left. You're a trick. A machine pretending to be one. The man slowly removed a panel from his chest armor and dropped it to the ground. Beneath the metal, his skin was bruised and burned, but undeniably real. Blood trickled from an old wound, fresh and red. No synthetic could mimic that pain. Rizek stepped forward. "What is your name?" she asked. Her voice, once sharp, now held a strange tone. Not fear, not curiosity, something colder. Something older. A memory she couldn't explain. The man looked at her for a long second. "Name?" he whispered. "No, you don't deserve to know it. Not after what your kind did to my world, my people, my wife." The silence that followed broke heavier than thunder. One soldier glanced nervously at another. This wasn't just survival. This was vengeance. Shaped into a man. Every breath he took was powered by rage carried across centuries. "You can't be the only one," Kale said. "If you survived, there might be others. Hidden somewhere, frozen, cloned, anything." The man's eyes turned hard. "I was not frozen. I was buried. I rebuilt my lungs with broken filters. Ate fungus from cave walls. Drank poison until it tasted clean. I watched the stars forget Earth. And I waited." The fire from a distant explosion reflected in his eyes. The ruins of the outpost crumbled slowly in the heat. Something inside the earth groaned, maybe old tech awakening. Maybe something worse. Rizek didn't move. "You waited for us to return?" she asked. "No," he replied. "I waited to see which of you would be the first to bleed." Without warning, he moved. Not like a soldier trained by drills, but like a predator shaped by hunger. His rusted spear sliced the air with force unnatural for a man his age. It struck Kale's rifle, snapping it in half. Before the others could fire, the man rolled behind a slab of wreckage. Plasma bolts followed, scorching the stone. Dust exploded into the air. But when it cleared, he was gone. "Scatter!" Rizek shouted. "He's using guerrilla tactics. This isn't just a survivor. He's trained. He knows Dominion patterns." She felt something twist in her chest. Not fear but guilt. Somewhere deep inside, an old part of her wondered if what they did to Earth had been right. Her father had told her stories of human cruelty. But now she wondered what those humans had endured first. The squad broke into pairs and moved through the ruins. Sensors scanned every corner. But Rizek knew it wouldn't help. This man didn't use signals or drones. He used instinct, pain, and silence. She tapped her comms. "Call the ship. Tell them we've made contact with a human. Alive. Armed. Dangerous. Send reinforcements immediately." No one noticed the faint blink of a tracking device pulsing under the sand, already marking every movement they made. This was no random survivor hiding in fear. This was a ghost of a dead race. And ghosts do not forgive. Rizek moved quickly through the broken hallways of the structure, each step crunching ancient glass under her boots. Her breathing stayed steady, but her mind was racing. This wasn't what she expected when they landed on Orphax 7. They came for ceremony, not combat. The sound of Kale's damaged rifle still echoed in her ears. The human had moved with speed and accuracy. His weapon was primitive, yet it struck like a storm. Rizek had seen assassins miss targets with plasma blades. But this man had used a jagged spear and left them rattled. She turned a corner and scanned a collapsed stairwell. Her visor picked up faint heat trails, but they vanished too quickly. He knew how to dodge sensors. He knew their tech. That fact alone made him far more dangerous than any animal on this world. A message crackled through her comms. No sign of him on the south side. Sending drones. Rizek didn't answer. She knew drones would fail. This was a trap. It had always been a trap. The survivor hadn't just waited, he had prepared. She moved silently into a corridor filled with rubble and broken lights. One flickered weakly above, casting shadows that twisted across the floor. Her foot brushed something metal. A strip of old Earth military plating. She picked it up and stared at the faded letters. It was a nameplate, burned and broken. But the letters were still clear enough. Her translator whispered the meaning, United Terran Defense. Her pulse quickened. This place was not random. It had once been a base, a grave. A memory sealed in ash. Behind her, a noise snapped. She spun around with her rifle raised. Nothing there. Only silence and shifting dust. But she could feel eyes on her, watching, judging. The kind of gaze that didn't belong to the hunted. But the hunter, he was testing them, learning them, letting them believe they were in control. She stepped forward again, slower now. Every sense on alert. Her fingers hovered near her sidearm. This was no ordinary enemy. This was the last whisper of a forgotten vengeance. Her team had split too far apart. She tapped into her comms. Regroup. Close pattern. Move toward the comms tower ruins. Static answered her at first, then the voice of a soldier came through. Copy, moving now. She didn't hear the scream until after the line went dead. She broke into a run, moving fast through stone and ash. She reached the open field where her soldier had been. His body was gone. Only his weapon remained, twisted and stabbed into the earth, not dropped. Planted like a flag, her hands tightened around her rifle. She turned in a circle, trying to catch the movement. A shadow blinked across the upper walls, but it disappeared again. She fired toward it, but the blast struck. Only dust and crumbling rock. From behind her, a voice spoke. Calm, cold, too close. You brought war to my grave. Now you'll join the others. She spun again, but he was already gone. Her heart pounded harder. This wasn't just survival instinct. This was psychological warfare. The human had spent years studying their kind. Their weakness wasn't tech. It was pride. The Dominion believed they had erased the past. But here, in the ruins of that lie, a single man was proving how wrong they had been. She sent a new order through the comms. Full lockdown, set perimeter flares, ready for close combat. There was no more pretending this was a mission of peace. They were in a war they never prepared for, and somewhere in the dust and shadows, the last human was smiling. Rizek moved quickly through the broken hallways of the structure, each step crunching ancient glass under her boots. Her breathing stayed steady, but her mind was racing. This wasn't what she expected when they landed on Orphac 7. They came for ceremony, not combat. The sound of Kale's damaged rifle still echoed in her ears. The human had moved with speed and accuracy. His weapon was primitive, yet it struck like a storm. Rizek had seen assassins miss targets with plasma blades, but this man had used a jagged spear and left them rattled. She turned a corner and scanned a collapsed stairwell. Her visor picked up faint heat trails, but they vanished too quickly. He knew how to dodge sensors. He knew their tech. That fact alone made him far more dangerous than any animal on this world. A message crackled through her comms. No sign of him on the south side. Sending drones. Rizek didn't answer. She knew drones would fail. This was a trap. It had always been a trap. The survivor hadn't just waited, he had prepared. She moved silently into a corridor filled with rubble and broken lights. One flickered weakly above, casting shadows that twisted across the floor. Her foot brushed something metal. A strip of old Earth military plating. She picked it up and stared at the faded letters. It was a nameplate, burned and broken. But the letters were still clear enough. Her translator whispered the meaning, United Terran Defense. Her pulse quickened. This place was not random. It had once been a base, a grave. A memory sealed in ash. Behind her, a noise snapped. She spun around with her rifle raised. Nothing there. Only silence and shifting dust. But she could feel eyes on her, watching, judging. The kind of gaze that didn't belong to the hunted. But the hunter, he was testing them, learning them, letting them believe they were in control. She stepped forward again, slower now. Every sense on alert. Her fingers hovered near her sidearm. This was no ordinary enemy. This was the last whisper of a forgotten vengeance. Her team had split too far apart. She tapped into her comms. Regroup. Close pattern. Move toward the comms tower ruins. Static answered her at first, then the voice of a soldier came through. Copy, moving now. She didn't hear the scream until after the line went dead. She broke into a run, moving fast through stone and ash. She reached the open field where her soldier had been. His body was gone. Only his weapon remained, twisted and stabbed into the earth, not dropped. Planted like a flag, her hands tightened around her rifle. She turned in a circle, trying to catch the movement. A shadow blinked across the upper walls, but it disappeared again. She fired toward it, but the blast struck. Only dust and crumbling rock. From behind her, a voice spoke. Calm, cold, too close. You brought war to my grave. Now you'll join the others. She spun again, but he was already gone. Her heart pounded harder. This wasn't just survival instinct. This was psychological warfare. The human had spent years studying their kind. Their weakness wasn't tech. It was pride. The Dominion believed they had erased the past. But here, in the ruins of that lie, a single man was proving how wrong they had been. She sent a new order through the comms. Full lockdown, set perimeter flares, ready for close combat. There was no more pretending this was a mission of peace. They were in a war they never prepared for, and somewhere in the dust and shadows, the last human was smiling. Deep beneath the ruins, the human survivor worked in silence. The small cave was lit by flickering blue light from the scavenged drone cell. Around him were pieces of broken weapons, Dominion tech, and ancient Earth circuits. His hands moved. Fast, practiced, and sure. Every wire he twisted reminded him of a time when humans ruled their own sky. Every part he fused was one more piece of the memory they tried to erase. This was not repair, it was resurrection. And it had purpose. He paused and touched the side of his helmet. It was old, scratched, patched together with metal from crashed ships. But it still carried what mattered most, a voice recorder. He pressed play, just for a second. A woman's voice filled the cave, faint, kind, laughing. Then it ended in static. He removed the recorder and slipped it into a metal box. Not to protect it, but to preserve her memory. Above him, the Dominion soldiers swept the surface with scanners. They walked inches from the trapdoor he'd built using old stone and fusion-welded hinges. It looked like part of the rock. It was never meant to be found. The man stood and walked to the far end of the chamber. On the wall, he had carved names. Hundreds of them. Some were full, some only initials. Some scratched deep from rage, others soft from sorrow. These were not names of allies. These were names of those lost. He added a new name to the wall. The soldier he took earlier, not out of mercy. Not out of regret. Out of ritual. The old ways still mattered to him, even if the galaxy had forgotten them. Back above ground, Ryzek gathered her officers in a circle. A hologram flickered in the air, showing a three-dimensional map of the ruins. He's not just hiding, she said. He's planning something. He has power, tools, and a motive. That makes him more dangerous than anything else we've faced on this rock. Kale frowned as he pointed to a collapsed corridor on the map. We searched here twice. What if the entrance isn't above ground? What if it's below us? Ryzek nodded. Then we collapse the tunnels and smoke him out. Orders were sent. Charges were set across the southern ruins. Small, controlled detonations meant to shake foundations. Soldiers took position on every level. guns raised, eyes open. Fear tucked just beneath the surface. The first blast cracked the ground. Dust burst upward. Metal groaned. From below, something hissed. A long, low sound like steam escaping from a dying machine. Then silence again. Rysek's hand hovered near her sidearm. Without warning, part of the ground gave way. Not from their charges, but from below. A trap sprung in reverse. 2 soldiers fell into the hole, their screams cut short. Their signals vanished. No warning. No sound. Just gone. Rysek rushed to the edge and peered into the darkness. Nothing but shadow. She tossed a light drone down. It vanished before reaching the bottom. She didn't speak. She only stared. Her jaw tightened. The human wasn't just fighting. He was adapting. The ground beneath the command post shook again. This time louder. Deeper. Like something alive was waking up below. A long metal howl echoed through the stone. Kale stepped back. "What is that?" he asked. Rysek didn't answer. She already knew. This was not just a survivor's shelter. It was a grave turned into a weapon, and they had stepped right into it. Asterisk smoke drifted through the broken ruins like ghosts crawling back into the world. Rysek stood with her rifle pressed to her shoulder, scanning the crater left behind by the collapse. 2 of her soldiers were missing. No trace, no bodies, no signals. Nothing but the silence of failure. Kale stood beside her, his armor covered in dirt and ash. His expression was cold now. There was no fear left in him. Just a growing understanding that they were not fighting a man, they were fighting a message. One made of blood, grief, and calculation. "Seal that tunnel," Rysek ordered. "He's baiting us. Trying to pull us in one by one." The engineers moved quickly, dropping reinforced plates over the cracked ground and setting up thermal barriers. But no one believed it would stop him for long. Inside the base, a medical officer showed her a report. The wounds on the recovered scout's armor weren't from Dominion weapons. They were caused by handcrafted blades wired with filament from old power cells, tools from the past. Weapons made from memory. "He's using parts from everything we left behind," the medic said. "Even our dead." Rysek didn't answer. She just walked away. Her fists were clenched, but it wasn't anger that filled her now. It was guilt. In her quarters, she removed her gloves and stared at her hands. Scars from old battles. A token from a war academy pinned on her collar. A symbol of Dominion pride. But for the first time, it felt heavy, not honorable. Just hollow. She turned on her private archive and opened a forbidden file. One labeled Operation Ashfall. It showed footage real, unedited from the day. Earth was destroyed. Fires over cities. Ships raining plasma onto forests. Screams. Children. Then static. The file ended with the official Dominion seal and 3 words. Necessary. Final. Victory. She closed it and whispered to herself. Lies. The alarm snapped her back to reality. Red lights flashed across the camp. Gunfire crackled from the northern wall. Her comms erupted with voices. Target seen. He's inside the perimeter. Repeat, he's inside. She bolted from her quarters and rushed to the scene. Flames flickered in the distance. One of the watchtowers had been set ablaze. 2 guards lay on the ground, unmoving. A third stumbled forward, bleeding from his side. He came through the vents. The soldier gasped. Too fast. He didn't shoot, just cut. Rysek looked up at the sky. The storm above swirled tighter now. The gravity pulse from underground was growing stronger. Readings on her visor blinked red. Seismic pressure. Energy output, all climbing. All unnatural. He's using the base, Kale said, arriving behind her. There's something under it. Some kind of engine or core. Old Earth tech, maybe. Whatever. It is he's turning it back on. Rysek stared toward the smoke. He's not just fighting us. He's trying to make the planet itself remember. She gathered her command unit. We attack now. Full force, every squad. No more waiting. We go into the tunnels and we end this. He started it beneath the ground, and that's where it ends. No one argued, not because they believed in her command, but because silence had become the language of fear. They moved in formation, rifles ready, lights cutting through the ash. The tunnel below opened like the mouth of a beast. Inside, it was darker than night. The walls pulsed with faint energy. Old symbols were carved into the stone, some in Earth language, others in Dominion code, all warning of something ancient buried within. The last human stood, deep within the chamber, alone, waiting. He looked at the fire in the distance and whispered to the air, "Let them come." The tunnel walls vibrated as Ryzek's squad descended deeper into the earth. Their boots left marks in the ancient dust, and their shadows danced along walls carved by hands long dead. The further they moved, the older the world felt. Their scanners picked up no life signs ahead. But Ryzek didn't trust machines anymore. The human had found ways to move without being seen, to strike without being tracked. He was always one step ahead, and she knew why. He had the advantage of purpose. The lights on their armor cast a cold glow over the stone. Old metal piping ran along the ceiling. Vines had crept down over the years, but here and there, power still pulsed. The base wasn't entirely dead. It was sleeping. And he had begun to wake it. Kale walked beside her, holding a pulse rifle close to his chest. His eyes scanned the corners while his breath came slow and steady. He didn't speak anymore. Number one did. They had all felt the shift. This was no longer a mission. It was a reckoning. They came upon a sealed door marked with Earth symbols. Ryzek tapped her interface against the panel, and to their surprise, it blinked green. The door opened with a hiss, not locked, not guarded. Inviting. Inside was a command center, burned screens, cracked chairs. But one table in the middle still glowed. A hologram of the planet rotated above it, flickering with static. And next, to it stood the man. His back was turned, his armor patched with melted Dominion plates. His left hand was covered in dried blood. In his right hand, he held a relic, a standard Earth combat blade, still sharp, still deadly. He did not turn around. Ryzek raised her weapon. "Don't move," she said. Her voice echoed across the chamber. The others aimed as well. Their fingers trembled on the triggers. But he did not flinch. He only spoke. "You buried my people," he said. "You turned our cities into ash. And now you ask me not to move." He turned slowly. His face was bruised but calm. The fire in his eyes did not flicker. "You think this ends with my death? It doesn't. I'm only the reminder." Kale stepped forward. "There were treaties. You attacked first." The man's expression didn't change. "We asked to be left alone. You brought your machines. You called us wild. So we showed you what wild really meant." Ryzek looked at him closely. She saw something in him she had never seen in any soldier before. Not rage, not pride, something quieter. A promise made. Too long ago to break. "I don't want more death," she said. "Surrender, we'll take you in. Let history deal with you. We don't have to end it here." The man stepped toward the table and pressed a button on the side. The map zoomed in. Beneath the planet's crust, hidden under layers of stone and steel, a massive core pulsed slowly. Old Earth tech. Something powerful, something dangerous. "I am history," he said. The lights above flickered. A deep hum filled the air. Energy from the core began to rise. The room grew warmer. Sweat beaded on foreheads. Ryzek's eyes widened as she realized what he had activated. "You'll destroy yourself too," she warned. "You won't survive this." He gave the smallest nod. "Good. Asterisk." The room shook as energy surged from the ancient Earth core. Lights on the control table flashed red. A low hum turned into a growl beneath their feet. Kale moved to disable the system, but the human stepped between them. "I've rerouted the failsafes," he said. "Touch it, and this place erupts faster." Rysek's squad stood frozen. Guns aimed. Breaths shallow. None of them fired. Something about the human's calm made them hesitate. He didn't look like a man begging to win. He looked like a man ready to end a cycle. "Why now?" Rysek asked. "Why wait centuries for this moment?" The man turned slightly, eyes distant. "Because time doesn't matter to the dead. It only matters to those who lie about them." He pointed at the core map. "This was once a heart, a lifeline for colonies. You turned it into a tomb." "I turned it into a warning." Kale stepped forward, his voice low. "This will start another war." The man looked at him. "It never ended." Rysek lowered her weapon, just slightly. Enough to make her soldiers nervous. She stepped closer. "You could leave this place. Let the truth speak for itself. Let the records be known. End it the right way." The man almost smiled, but his eyes didn't soften. "The right way died when your leaders melted cities to prove a point. The only way left is to show them what happens when ghosts fight back." He pressed something on his wrist. A soft chime echoed across the chamber. The core began to glow brighter. Heat poured into the room. Walls vibrated. Stones fell from the ceiling. The countdown had begun. Rysek rushed forward and slammed her hand on the panel. "There must be a way to override this." "There's always a back door." "There is," the man said. "But it requires a choice." From his chest plate, he pulled a second controller and dropped it at her feet. "That shuts it all down, but it seals the truth too. No record, no proof. Just silence." She looked at the device. Then at him. He stood unflinching, framed by firelight, not pleading, not demanding, offering her something more dangerous than a weapon. A decision. The clock above the core ticked down. 60 seconds. Her hands shook. The silence pressed against her. All the soldiers watched her. No one spoke. Not even Kale. She reached down and picked up the controller. "Do you want this to end?" she asked. "No," he said. "I want it to be remembered." Her fingers hovered over the button. The world held its breath. Then slowly she closed her hand around it and stepped back. She didn't press it. The human nodded. The core pulsed once more. But instead of exploding, it fired a data beam into the sky. A blinding stream of light broke through the ruins and shot into orbit. It carried files, images, footage, testimonies, names, everything the Dominion buried. The room dimmed. The quake slowed. The countdown froze at 0. The man fell to one knee, exhausted. Not wounded, just emptied. His mission was done. Rysek looked at him in silence. "You used the threat to deliver the truth." He looked up at her and finally smiled. "We were never the monsters. We were just the warning."